Maybe you should focus on mopping floors instead of raising children. The words hung in the air of Greenwood Academy's conference room like poison. Lily Santos, 34 years old, stood frozen near the back wall, her cleaning cart beside her, as every parent in the room turned to stare at her. The speaker was Victoria Harrington, president of the PTA and wife of a prominent real estate mogul. Her perfectly highlighted hair caught the overhead lights as she gestured dismissively toward Lily. I mean, seriously, how can we expect quality parenting from someone who scrubs our toilets for a living? Laughter rippled through the group of wealthy parents. Expensive watches glinted. Designer purses sat on polished chairs. This was the annual parent-teacher conference at one of Connecticut's most prestigious private schools, where tuition cost more than most people's yearly salary. Lily's son, Daniel, was 7 years old and sat in the hallway outside, waiting for his turn to present his science project. He'd worked on it for weeks. A solar-powered model car he'd built mostly from recycled materials, because that's all they could afford. She'd been so proud of him. My name is Lily Santos, and I never imagined that cleaning the floors of my son's school would lead to the most humiliating moment of my life. At least that's what I thought it was at the time. I had no idea this moment would become the catalyst for something far bigger than any of these people could comprehend. Mrs. Santos works very hard. Daniel's teacher, Miss Cooper, interjected weakly. But her voice barely carried weight against the wave of condescension filling the room. I'm sure she does, Victoria continued, examining her manicured nails. But let's be honest. This is Greenwood Academy. Our children are being groomed for Ivy League schools, for positions of leadership and power. They need role models who understand success, not. She waved her hand vaguely toward Lily. Struggle. Another parent, Marcus Chen, leaned back in his chair with a smirk. I heard her kid's science project is made from trash. Literally. Trash. That's the kind of mentality we're talking about here. More laughter. Lily's hands trembled as she gripped the handle of her cleaning cart. She'd come in early specifically to finish the East Wing before the conference started, but Victoria had insisted the conference room needed immediate attention. Now she understood why. This had been planned. Victoria wanted her here, wanted her humiliated in front of everyone. What these people didn't know was that Lily had been noticing things for months. The way Victoria's eyes followed her with calculated cruelty. The suspicious whispers that stopped when she entered rooms. The accidental spills that always happened right after she'd finished cleaning an area. There had been signs. Small victories stolen. Her son's artwork removed from the hallway displays. His name mysteriously left off the honor roll despite his perfect grades. The scholarship that had been promised but never materialized. But Lily had kept her head down, kept working, kept pushing forward, because that's what survivors did. And she was nothing if not a survivor. You know what I think? Victoria stood up, her voice dripping with false concern. I think we need to establish some guidelines about appropriate parent participation. Perhaps a minimum income requirement or education level. We can't have just anyone influencing our children's environment. The principal, Dr. Raymond Walsh, shifted uncomfortably in his seat but said nothing. He was new, only 3 months into the job, and clearly didn't want to make waves with the school's wealthiest donors. Lily finally found her voice. My son has a 4.0 GPA. He's kind, respectful, and works harder than any child in this school. That should be what matters. Oh, sweetie. Victoria's smile was venomous. Hard work is adorable. Really. But this world? It runs on connections, on breeding, on knowing your place. And your place is behind that cleaning cart, not in this room with actual parents who can contribute meaningfully to this institution. Something crystallized in that moment. Lily looked around the room at the faces staring at her with pity, disgust, or cruel amusement. She saw Dr. Walsh avoiding her eyes. She saw Miss Cooper's sympathetic but ultimately powerless expression, and she made a decision. You're absolutely right, Lily said quietly, gathering her cleaning supplies. I do know my place. I just hadn't realized it yet. Victoria smiled triumphantly. Wonderful. I'm so glad we could have this conversation. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have important matters to discuss. As Lily pushed her cart toward the door, She passed the window overlooking the parking lot, Victoria's Mercedes, Marcus's Tesla, Dr. Walsh's BMW. A sea of luxury vehicles that represented a world she'd never been part of. But what none of them knew, what none of them could possibly know, was that Lily Santos hadn't always been a janitor. 3 years ago, before her husband's death in a construction accident, before the medical bills and the foreclosure, before she'd lost everything, she'd been someone very different. She'd been a certified financial analyst with an MBA from NYU. She'd managed investment portfolios worth millions. She'd understood the language of power and money better than any of these pretenders. And in the last 6 months, while they'd been busy humiliating her, she'd been quietly, carefully rebuilding everything she'd lost. They just hadn't noticed yet. As she left the conference room, Lily caught her reflection in the hallway mirror. Her eyes held something new. Not hurt, not shame. Something colder, something that looked almost like satisfaction. Because the game had just begun, and these people had no idea they were already losing. If you're enjoying this story of justice and comeback, don't forget to subscribe to see exactly how a janitor becomes the one signing their paychecks. Daniel was crying in the parking lot when Lily found him. His solar-powered car lay smashed on the pavement, plastic pieces scattered across the asphalt. The project he'd spent 3 weeks building, the one he'd been so excited to present, destroyed. They said it was an accident, Daniel whispered, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. But I saw Marcus Chen's son laughing. He kicked it off the table, Mom. On purpose. Lily knelt beside him, her heart shattering as she gathered the broken pieces. This wasn't just about her anymore. They were targeting her child. We'll rebuild it, she said softly, though her voice trembled with suppressed rage. We'll make it even better. What's the point? Daniel looked up at her with eyes too old for 7 years. They're never going to like me here. Because of what you do. Because we're poor. The word hit her like a physical blow. Poor. When had her son learned that word? When had he started measuring his worth by their bank account? Listen to me. She took his face in her hands. What I do doesn't define who we are. And what they think of us doesn't determine our future. Do you understand? He nodded. But she could see the doubt in his eyes. The same doubt she'd been fighting for 3 years. That night, Lily sat at their small kitchen table in their one-bedroom apartment, the broken pieces of Daniel's project spread before her. Their apartment was in the cheapest complex in town, 40 minutes from Greenwood Academy. She worked the night shift cleaning after her day shift so she could afford the tuition, even with the partial scholarship. Her phone buzzed. An email from the school. Dear Mrs. Santos, due to recent budget adjustments, we regret to inform you that your janitorial position will be terminated at the end of this month. We appreciate your service. Dr. Raymond Walsh. Principal Lily stared at the screen, her hands steady despite the fury building in her chest. 2 hours after Victoria's public humiliation, and they were firing her. The timing was too convenient, too calculated. She opened her laptop, the one luxury she kept from her old life, and logged into an account she hadn't accessed in months. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up files, records, information she'd been quietly gathering. 3 years ago, after her husband Miguel's death, everything had fallen apart. The insurance company denied the claim, citing a technicality. Medical bills from his final weeks swallowed their savings. The mortgage company foreclosed within 6 months. Lily had been broken, desperate, barely functioning. She'd taken the janitorial job at Greenwood because it came with a scholarship opportunity for Daniel. She'd hidden her education, her previous career, because she was ashamed. Because she didn't want pity. But shame was a luxury she could no longer afford. She pulled up her old professional network on LinkedIn. Most of her contacts were still active, still working in finance and investment. She'd been gone 3 years, but in the world of money, talent had a long memory. One name stood out. James Morrison. They'd worked together at Sterling Investment Group before she left to focus on family. He'd always told her she was the sharpest analyst he'd ever met. She typed a message. James, it's Lily Santos. I know it's been a long time. I need advice. Are you available for a call? The response came within 5 minutes. Lily, I've been wondering about you. Call me tomorrow. I might have something interesting to discuss. She closed the laptop and looked at the broken solar car. Daniel had used recycled materials because that's what they had. But he'd engineered it brilliantly, with gears and mechanisms that showed real understanding of physics and design. Her son was brilliant. And these people wanted to crush him because of where he came from. The next week at school was worse. Victoria made sure of it. She filed a formal complaint claiming Lily had been inappropriate during the parent conference. Dr. Walsh called Lily into his office, his expression apologetic but firm. "Look, I don't want to do this," he said, not meeting her eyes. "But Mrs. Harrington is our largest donor, the new science wing." "That's her family's money. The scholarship program? Also her money. I can't afford to alienate her." "So you're choosing money over what's right," Lily said flatly. "I'm choosing to keep this school operational." He slid a paper across his desk. "Your severance. 2 weeks' pay." "I'm sorry, but it's effective immediately." Lily looked at the check. It was barely enough to cover 1 month's rent. "And Daniel's scholarship?" Dr. Walsh's silence was answer enough. "I see." Lily stood, taking the check. "Thank you for your honesty at least." As she walked through the hallways one last time, pushing her cleaning cart, Victoria appeared with 2 other PTA mothers. They didn't even try to hide their satisfaction. "Oh, Lily," Victoria called out, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I heard about your termination. Such a shame. But honestly, it's probably for the best. This environment was clearly too." She paused, smiling. "Aspirational for someone like you." "Someone like me," Lily repeated. "You know what I mean. Blue collar, limited education. It's not an insult. It's just reality. We all have our place in the world. Yours just happens to be somewhere else." The other mothers giggled. One of them, Jessica Park, added, "I heard your son is leaving too. Probably better for him. He'll fit in better at a public school." Lily felt something shift inside her. Not anger, not hurt. Something colder and far more dangerous. "You're right," she said quietly. "We all have our place in the world. Sometimes it just takes us a while to find it again." Victoria frowned, sensing something in Lily's tone she couldn't quite identify. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing." Lily smiled, and it was genuine. "Absolutely nothing. Yet." That afternoon, Lily met James Morrison at a coffee shop downtown. He'd aged well, silver at his temples, still sharp-eyed and quick with numbers. "You disappeared," he said, embracing her. "One day you were the best analyst at Sterling. The next you were gone." "What happened?" She told him everything. Miguel's death, the financial collapse, the years of survival mode, the humiliation at Greenwood. James listened without interrupting. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. "So you've been hiding your talents, working as a janitor, while these people treated you like garbage. That's one way to put it. And now you want back in the game. I want more than that." Lily's eyes hardened. "I want to show them exactly who they've been stepping on." James pulled out his phone and showed her a news article. "Greenwood Academy is in financial trouble. Has been for 2 years. They're leveraged to the hilt, borrowed heavily to fund expansions. Victoria Harrington's donations are basically keeping them afloat, which is why Walsh kisses her feet." "How much trouble?" "They're 1 bad quarter from insolvency. The board is quietly looking for buyers, someone to take over operations and inject capital." He looked at her meaningfully. "Someone who understands both education and finance." Lily's heart began to race. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I run a private equity firm now. We specialize in distressed acquisitions. And I'm saying that if you're ready to come back, if you're ready to be who you really are again, I have a position for you, senior analyst. Good salary. And your first project?" He grinned. Evaluating Greenwood Academy as a potential acquisition target. The pieces fell into place in Lily's mind. The possibilities. The perfect, poetic justice of it all. "When do I start?" "Monday." "But Lily?" James's expression turned serious. "This won't be easy. You'll need to rebuild your credibility, work twice as hard as anyone else to prove you're back. And acquiring Greenwood? That's a long game. Could take a year or more. I've spent 3 years cleaning their floors, Lily said. I can spend 1 more year playing chess while they think I've left the board entirely. As she drove home that evening, Lily passed Greenwood Academy. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the pristine grounds, the manicured lawns, the building where her son had been humiliated and her dignity had been stripped away. But for the first time in 3 years, she didn't feel small looking at it. She felt hungry. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Dr. Eleanor Chen, Marcus Chen's sister. I was at that conference. What Victoria did was wrong. If you ever need someone who knows where the bodies are buried at Greenwood, call me. Lily stared at the message. An ally. Unexpected and potentially powerful. She saved the number and smiled. Victoria Harrington thought she'd won. She thought she'd successfully removed an embarrassing problem from her perfect world. She had no idea she'd just created her worst nightmare. 6 months later, Lily sat in a glass-walled conference room on the 32nd floor of Morrison Capital Group, reviewing financial statements that would have made most people's eyes glaze over. To her, they told a story more compelling than any novel. Greenwood Academy was bleeding money. The expansion they did 3 years ago? James pointed at the numbers on the screen. Completely over-leveraged. They borrowed $12 million against projected enrollment increases that never materialized. Now they're paying interest on debt they can't service. Lily highlighted several line items. And Victoria Harrington's donations? Keeping them alive. But barely. She's given $2 million over the past 18 months. Without it, they'd have defaulted already. So she owns them. Essentially. Which is why Walsh does whatever she says. James leaned back. But here's the interesting part. Victoria's husband's real estate company is also struggling. Overextended in commercial properties. If his cash flow dries up, so does her ability to keep Greenwood afloat. Lily's mind raced through possibilities. How long before they have to make a decision? 6 months? Maybe 8. The bank won't extend their credit line beyond that. It was almost too perfect. Her phone buzzed. Eleanor Chen, coffee tomorrow? I have information you'll want to hear. Lily had been meeting with Eleanor regularly, carefully building trust. Eleanor was Marcus Chan's sister, but the two siblings despised each other. She was a child psychologist who'd quit the Greenwood board over ethical concerns and had been waiting years for someone to challenge the toxic culture Victoria had created. They met at a quiet cafe away from Greenwood's neighborhood. Eleanor slid a folder across the table. Enrollment applications for next year, she said. Notice anything? Lily scanned the documents. Applications are down 30%. Parents are noticing the culture. The bullying. The elitism. It's getting a reputation as a place where money matters more than education. 3 families withdrew their kids last month alone. Does Victoria know? She knows. She's panicking. That's why she's been even more vicious than usual. Eleanor's expression darkened. She sent a letter to the remaining scholarship families last week, suggesting they'd be more comfortable at public schools. Trying to push out anyone who doesn't fit her vision. Lily's jaw tightened. That's discrimination. That's Victoria. But here's the thing, Lily. The board is split. Half of them are terrified of losing her money. The other half are terrified of losing their accreditation because the school's becoming a toxic nightmare. There's going to be a vote in 3 months about the school's direction. And if they vote against her, Eleanor smiled. She's threatened to pull all funding. Which means the school collapses. Which means someone else could buy it. The pieces were aligning. Meanwhile, Daniel had transferred to Lincoln Elementary, a public school across town. Lily had worried about the transition, but her son had thrived. His new teacher, Mr. Rodriguez, recognized his talents immediately. Within 2 months, Daniel was in the gifted program, working on projects that actually challenged him. Mom, look! Daniel burst into their apartment one evening, waving a certificate. I won the district science fair. Mr. Rodriguez said my project was the most innovative he'd seen in 10 years. It was the recycled solar car. They'd rebuilt it together, improved it. The same project Marcus Chen's son had destroyed. Lily hugged him tight, fighting tears. I'm so proud of you, Mr. Rodriguez says I could get into any middle school in the state with this. Maybe even get scholarships. Daniel's eyes shone. We don't need Greenwood, do we? No, baby. We never did. But as she watched her son celebrate, Lily thought about all the other kids at Greenwood who weren't as lucky. The scholarship students Victoria was trying to push out. The children being taught that cruelty was acceptable if you had enough money. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about changing something fundamentally broken. Her work at Morrison Capital was exceeding expectations. She'd rebuilt her professional reputation quickly, her instincts still razor-sharp despite the 3-year gap. Other firms had started reaching out, trying to poach her. But she stayed focused on one goal: Greenwood. You're obsessed, James observed one evening as they worked late. Most analysts would have moved on to other projects by now. Most analysts weren't publicly humiliated and fired by these people. Is this about justice or revenge? Lily considered the question. Maybe it started as revenge. But now I've seen the enrollment data, the complaints from parents. The teachers who've quit because of the toxic environment Victoria created. This place is failing children, James. Good children who deserve better. So you want to save it. I want to buy it, restructure it, and turn it into what it should have been all along. A place where talent matters more than trust funds. James studied her for a long moment. You know, if we acquire it, you'd likely be appointed to the board. Possibly even offered a leadership role. I know. Which means you'd be Victoria Harrington's boss. Lily smiled. I know that too. The next piece fell into place when Eleanor called her late one night. Victoria's husband just filed for bankruptcy protection, Eleanor said without preamble. His real estate company collapsed. Something about bad loans and over-leveraged properties. It's going to be in the papers tomorrow. Lily's heart raced. Which means Victoria can't keep funding Greenwood. She's about to lose everything. The timing was almost too convenient. Lily pulled up Robert Harrington's company records on her computer. The debt structure, the failed investments, the cascade of poor decisions, and then she saw it. One of the firms that had called in Robert's loans early, triggering the bankruptcy? A subsidiary of a company that James had connections to. She called him immediately. Did you do this? Do what? His voice was innocent, but she could hear the smile. Robert Harrington's bankruptcy. Did you help make that happen? I may have mentioned to some colleagues that his debt exposure was problematic. I may have suggested they might want to protect their interests. What people do with information. That's their choice. James, you're not the only one who thinks Greenwood needs better leadership. Lily, some of us have been waiting for the right person to come along and fix it. I'm just making sure that person has an opportunity. After they hung up, Lily sat in the darkness of her apartment, processing what had happened. James hadn't just given her a job. He'd been orchestrating pieces of a plan that would give her the chance to acquire Greenwood. But there was still work to do. She spent the next 2 months working 18-hour days, building the acquisition proposal. Eleanor provided inside information about the board's thinking. James secured preliminary funding commitments. And Lily crafted a vision for Greenwood that emphasized academic excellence over social status. Victoria, meanwhile, was imploding. Without her husband's money, without her ability to control the school through donations, her power base was crumbling. Board members who'd been afraid to challenge her were suddenly finding their voices. At a PTA meeting in early spring, parents who'd been silent for years started speaking up about the toxic culture, about their children coming home in tears, about the emphasis on wealth over character. Victoria tried to maintain control, but her desperation was showing. These people don't understand what we've built here. She snapped at one meeting, her composure cracking. They want to turn Greenwood into some common public school where anyone can attend. That's not what this institution is about. Then what is it about? A parent challenged. Because my daughter hates coming here. She has nightmares about being bullied by your son. Victoria's face flushed. If your daughter can't handle the competitive environment, competitive? You call excluding children based on their parents' income competitive? The meeting dissolved into chaos. Victoria left early, her mask of superiority finally shattered. Eleanor texted Lily that night. The board is meeting next week to discuss alternative funding sources. This is it. Lily finalized the acquisition proposal. Morrison Capital would purchase Greenwood's debt, restructure the school's finances, and install new leadership. The proposal included expanded scholarship programs, renewed focus on academic achievement regardless of economic background, and a complete overhaul of the culture. It was everything Victoria had fought against. It was everything the school actually needed. The morning before the board meeting, Lily did something she hadn't done in 3 years. She drove past the school during drop-off. She saw Victoria's Mercedes in the parking lot, saw the woman herself standing near the entrance, her designer clothes and perfect hair in place, still clinging to the illusion of power. But Lily also saw the parents avoiding her, the whispered conversations, the way even Dr. Walsh seemed to be keeping his distance. Victoria Harrington's empire was crumbling, and she didn't even know why. Lily's phone rang. James, the board wants to hear our proposal tomorrow. 3 o'clock. They're bringing all potential buyers. How many others? 2 other groups. But Lily? We're the only ones proposing to keep it as a school. The others want to convert it to condos or office space. Then we're the only real option. If the board has the courage to choose change over comfort. That's not guaranteed. Lily looked at the school one more time. At the building where she'd been humiliated, where her son had been targeted, where so many children had learned that cruelty was acceptable if you had money. It will be enough, she said quietly. It has to be. Because tomorrow Victoria Harrington was going to discover that the janitor she'd mocked, the woman she'd destroyed without a second thought, was about to become the person who decided her fate. And that realization would only be the beginning. The boardroom at Greenwood Academy was packed. Lily walked in wearing a tailored navy suit, her hair pulled back professionally, carrying a leather portfolio. She looked nothing like the janitor who'd pushed a cleaning cart through these halls 7 months ago. Victoria Harrington was already seated near the head of the table, her expression radiating forced confidence. When Lily entered, Victoria barely glanced at her, too focused on whispering urgently to Dr. Walsh. Ladies and gentlemen, the board chairman, Arthur Hendricks, called the meeting to order. We have 3 proposals to consider today regarding Greenwood's financial future. Let's begin. The first 2 presentations were brief. A real estate developer who wanted to convert the property into luxury condos. A commercial firm proposing office space. Both offered good money for the land but meant the school would close permanently. Parents in the observation section murmured anxiously. And now, Arthur gestured toward James. Morrison Capital Group. James stood. Thank you. We're proposing something different. Not just a purchase, but a transformation. Morrison Capital will acquire Greenwood's debt, inject necessary operating capital, and restructure the institution under new leadership focused on academic excellence rather than social exclusivity. Victoria's head snapped up. Excuse me? New leadership? Let me introduce our lead analyst on this project. James continued smoothly. The person who would oversee the restructuring and serve on the newly formed board. Miss Lily Santos. The room went silent. Victoria's face drained of color as Lily stood and walked to the front. Recognition dawned slowly, disbelief mixing with horror. That's the janitor. Victoria stammered. This is a joke. Actually. Lily's voice was calm. Professional. I am a certified financial analyst with an MBA from NYU. I specialized in institutional restructuring before personal circumstances required me to step away from the field. I've spent the last 7 months analyzing Greenwood's finances, and I'm here to tell you that this institution is failing. Not because of lack of resources, but because of toxic leadership that prioritizes wealth over education. She clicked to her first slide. Financial charts appeared on the screen. Enrollment down 32% over 3 years. Teacher retention at historic lows. 7 formal complaints filed with the State Board of Education regarding discrimination. Operating costs exceeding revenue by $2.3 million annually. Dr. Walsh shifted uncomfortably. Victoria's hands clenched on the table. But the real issue, Lily continued, is cultural. Greenwood has become known not for academic excellence, but for exclusionary practices that violate its own charter as a nonprofit educational institution. She clicked again. Screenshots of emails appeared. Victoria's own words, telling scholarship families they should consider other options. Dr. Walsh's memo about maintaining standards that explicitly mentioned income levels. Where did you get those? Victoria's voice rose. Those are private communications. Filed with the board as part of official complaints, Eleanor Chen said from her seat. Public record once they became part of an investigation. Investigation? Dr. Walsh went pale. The State Board of Education has been reviewing Greenwood for 6 months, Arthur confirmed. Mrs. Harrington, Dr. Walsh, did you really think your actions wouldn't have consequences? Lily advanced to the next slide. Morrison Capital's proposal includes immediate diversification of enrollment, expansion of scholarship programs based purely on merit, and replacement of administration that has violated the school's educational mission. You can't do this. Victoria stood, her voice shaking. I've given millions to this school. I've kept it running. You can't just... You kept it running? Lily's tone sharpened. Let me show you what you actually did. The next slides were devastating. Documentation of students who'd left due to bullying. Teacher testimonials about being pressured to favor wealthy students. Financial records showing Victoria's donations came with strings attached approvals over hiring, admissions, even curriculum. You didn't save this school, Mrs. Harrington. You bought it. And then you used it as your personal social club while actual education became secondary. Victoria's face flushed red. How dare you? You're a janitor. You cleaned toilets. You have no right. I had every right to take any honest job to support my son. Lily's voice cut through the room like a blade. What you never had the right to do was treat people as lesser because of their circumstances. To teach children that cruelty is acceptable if you're wealthy enough. She turned back to the board. 7 months ago, I stood in a conference room down the hall while Mrs. Harrington publicly mocked me, suggested I was an unfit parent because of my job, and ultimately got me fired for daring to exist in her presence. My son's science project was destroyed by her son. We were pushed out because we didn't meet her financial standards. That's not... Victoria started. I have witnesses, including your own sister-in-law, Dr. Eleanor Chen, who documented the entire incident. Eleanor raised her hand. It's all in my formal complaint, with testimony from 4 other parents who witnessed it. Victoria looked around the room desperately. This is revenge. She's doing this because she's bitter about being fired. No, Lily said quietly. I'm doing this because children deserve better. Because Greenwood Academy's charter promises educational opportunity regardless of economic background. Because somewhere in this pursuit of prestige and exclusivity, everyone forgot what schools are actually for. She clicked to her final slide. The restructuring plan. Expanded scholarships. Merit-based admissions. New anti-bullying protocols. Teacher empowerment programs. Community partnerships. Morrison Capital is offering $12 million in financing. Debt restructuring that will make the school solvent within 2 years. And a leadership team focused on actual education. In return, we ask for majority control of the board and the authority to implement necessary cultural changes. Arthur looked at the other board members. Several were nodding. The alternative, James added, is liquidation. The school closes, the property is sold, and Greenwood Academy becomes a footnote in Connecticut education history. You can't let them do this. Victoria's voice cracked. I built this place. My family's name is on the science wing. A wing that's falling apart because funds were misallocated. Lily pulled up maintenance records. Your donations came with publicity requirements that diverted money from actual needs. The roof leaks. The VAC system is failing. But you got your name on a building. The board members were whispering among themselves now. Dr. Walsh tried one last defense. Mrs. Harrington has been our most loyal supporter. Surely we can find a compromise. Dr. Walsh, Arthur interrupted. You're also named in the state investigation. Your employment here is contingent on the outcome of that review. I'd suggest you stop talking. Victoria's perfectly composed facade finally cracked completely. "You're all going to regret this." "My lawyers. Your lawyers will find that every action we've taken is legal and documented," James said calmly. "As will your husband's bankruptcy trustees, who are currently investigating some interesting financial transfers between his company and Greenwood's accounts." Victoria went white. "You can't prove." "I can prove that you used donated funds inappropriately, that you violated nonprofit regulations, and that you created a hostile environment that exposed the school to significant legal liability." Lily's voice was steel. "Your choice is to walk away quietly or face public exposure of everything you've done." The room was silent except for Victoria's ragged breathing. Arthur cleared his throat. "The board will vote. All in favor of accepting Morrison Capital's proposal?" 7 hands rose immediately, then another, then 2 more. 10 out of 12. Motion passes. Arthur looked at Victoria. "Mrs. Harrington, your position on the PTA is terminated effective immediately. Dr. Walsh, you'll be hearing from the board regarding your future here." "This meeting is adjourned." Victoria stood frozen, her world collapsing around her. She looked at Lily with pure hatred. "You think you've won? You're still just a janitor playing dress-up. People will see through you." Lily walked closer, her voice low enough that only Victoria could hear. "I was never just anything, Mrs. Harrington. You were just too blinded by your own arrogance to see it. And now? Now I'm the person who decides whether you're ever allowed back on these grounds." She stepped back, her voice returning to normal volume. "Security will escort you out. Please don't come back without an appointment." As security guards approached, Victoria's mask shattered completely. "This isn't over. I'll destroy you." You'll do nothing," Eleanor said, standing up. "Because if you try, every parent in this room will testify about what you've done. Every teacher will speak up. Your reputation is finished, Victoria. Accept it with whatever dignity you have left." Victoria was led out, her protests echoing down the hallway. The parents in the observation section erupted in applause. Dr. Walsh left quietly through a side door, his face ashen. Lily stood at the front of the room, looking at the board members, the parents, the space where 7 months ago she'd been humiliated. James appeared beside her. "How does it feel?" "Ask me when we've actually fixed this place," she said. This was the easy part. The real work starts now. But she was smiling. If you've been following this journey from janitor to decision maker, subscribe to see how completely transforming a broken system is the ultimate form of justice. 18 months later. Lily stood at the front entrance of Greenwood Academy, watching the morning drop-off. The changes were visible everywhere. The parking lot held a mix of vehicles now. Not just luxury cars, but Hondas, Toyotas, even a few older models held together with determination and duct tape. Parents from every economic background walked their children to class, chatting comfortably, no longer segregated by wealth. The science wing, renamed the Academic Excellence Center, had been renovated with funds redirected from Victoria's vanity projects. Solar panels Daniel had helped design covered the roof. Inside, students from scholarship and full tuition families worked side by side on projects judged purely on merit. "Miss Santos?" A teacher approached, smiling. "The state accreditation team just left. They said we're a model for inclusive education now. Complete reversal from the probation status we were under." Lily nodded, satisfaction warming her chest. "That's because we remembered what schools are supposed to be." Enrollment had increased 43%. Teacher retention was at an all-time high. Applications for next year were flooding in, not from families seeking exclusivity but from families seeking excellence. And Daniel? He was thriving in 8th grade now. Captain of the robotics team, mentoring younger students in engineering. His room at home was filled with trophies and certificates, but more importantly, with genuine friendships. "Mom!" He spotted her across the courtyard, waving. Beside him was Marcus Chun's younger daughter, Amy, laughing at something he'd said. The Chun family had apologized publicly, and Marcus had quietly resigned from the PTA. His sister Eleanor now served as head of the Parent Advisory Board. Life had a funny way of redistributing karma. Victoria Harrington's fall had been spectacular and permanent. After the board meeting, investigative journalists had picked up the story. The tale of a wealthy socialite who'd used a nonprofit school as her personal kingdom went viral. Her country club membership was quietly revoked. The charities she'd chaired asked her to step down. Invitations to galas stopped coming. Her husband's bankruptcy had destroyed their finances. They'd been forced to sell the mansion, downsized to a modest home in a different district. Victoria's social media accounts, once filled with carefully curated images of perfection, went silent. But the final blow came when Greenwood's new anti-bullying task force, which Lily had established, publicly documented years of harassment that Victoria's son had perpetrated with her implicit approval. The boy was expelled, required to attend counseling, and the incident became part of his permanent academic record. Victoria had tried to fight it, threatened lawsuits, made accusations. But the evidence was overwhelming. Testimony from dozens of students and parents. Documentation Eleanor had been quietly gathering for years. In the end, Victoria had simply disappeared from public life. Some said she'd moved to Florida. Others heard she was working retail. Ironically enough, the woman who'd mocked others for honest work now understood what it meant to rebuild from nothing. Dr. Walsh had resigned before he could be fired, his reputation tarnished by the state investigation. He found work at a small private school in Pennsylvania, far from Connecticut, where no one knew his history. Meanwhile, Lily had been formally appointed to Greenwood's board and offered the position of director of operations. She'd accepted, but insisted on keeping her work at Morrison Capital part-time. She wanted to maintain both worlds, education and finance, because she'd learned that real change required understanding both. The local newspaper had run a feature story. From janitor to executive. One mother's journey to transform education. The article had gone national, then international. Lily had been invited to speak at education conferences, to consult with other struggling schools, but she remained focused on Greenwood. One morning, she found an envelope on her desk. Inside was a handwritten letter. Miss Santos, you don't know me, but my daughter is in 6th grade at Greenwood on one of your new scholarships. Last year, she was at a failing public school, giving up on learning because she'd been told she wasn't smart enough. Yesterday, she came home excited about her science project. She said her teacher told her she had real potential. She's smiling again. Thank you for remembering that all children deserve a chance. Maria Rodriguez Lily kept that letter in her desk drawer. On difficult days, when budgets were tight or decisions were hard, she'd read it and remember why this mattered. The annual parent conference came around again. The same conference room where Victoria had humiliated her. Lily stood at the front, presenting the year's achievements to a packed room of engaged, diverse parents. Test scores up. College acceptance rates climbing. Culture surveys showing students felt safe and valued. The measure of a school isn't the size of its donors' bank accounts, Lily told the assembled parents. It's the size of its impact on children's lives. It's whether students leave here believing in themselves, equipped not just with knowledge, but with character. Applause filled the room. Real applause, not the polite golf claps of Victoria's era. After the meeting, a woman approached hesitantly. She looked vaguely familiar. Ms. Santos, I'm Jessica Park. I was at the conference where Mrs. Harrington said those terrible things to you. I laughed along with her. The woman's eyes filled with tears. I'm so ashamed. I wanted to apologize. What you've done here, what you've built. It's shown me how wrong I was about everything. Lily studied her for a moment. Your daughter is in Daniel's robotics club, isn't she? Jessica nodded. She loves it. She talks about Daniel constantly. Says he's the smartest person she knows. He's learned to judge people by their character, not their circumstances. Lily's voice was gentle but firm. That's what we're teaching here now. It's not too late for any of us to learn that lesson. Jessica wiped her eyes. Thank you for having the grace to forgive us. As she walked away, Eleanor appeared beside Lily. You handled that well. More gracefully than I would have. Holding on to anger would only poison me, Lily said. They faced their shame. Victoria lost everything because she couldn't learn humility. I won't make the same mistake. That evening, Lily and Daniel sat on their apartment balcony, a nicer apartment now, though still modest by Greenwood standards. She'd deliberately chosen not to move to a wealthy neighborhood. She wanted Daniel to remember where they'd come from. "Mom?" Daniel looked up from his homework. "Mr. Rodriguez said I could apply to MIT's summer program for high school students. It's really competitive though. You'll get in," Lily said with certainty. "You know why? Because I'm smart?" "Because you're smart, yes. But more importantly, because you've learned that obstacles don't define you. How you respond to them does. You've learned that people's opinions about you don't determine your worth. Your character does." Daniel was quiet for a moment. "Do you ever regret it? Working as a janitor? Being treated that way?" Lily considered the question carefully. "I regret that you had to see me treated poorly. I regret that you were hurt. But the experience itself?" She shook her head. "It taught me something I'd forgotten. That dignity isn't something people give you. It's something you carry inside yourself that no one can take away. Victoria tried to take yours. She tried. But she couldn't, because dignity isn't about what job you have or how much money you make. It's about knowing your worth regardless of what others think." She pulled him close. "And here's what I learned, Daniel. The best revenge isn't destroying the people who hurt you. It's becoming so successful, so focused on positive change, that their cruelty becomes irrelevant. We didn't just beat Victoria. We made her kind of thinking obsolete. A year ago, if someone had told Lily she'd be running the school where she'd once scrubbed floors, she wouldn't have believed it. But life had a way of surprising you when you refused to quit. Victoria had seen a janitor and dismissed her as worthless. She'd never bothered to ask who that janitor had been before tragedy struck. Never considered that circumstances don't define character. Never imagined that the woman pushing a cleaning cart might be the most qualified person in the building to transform what was broken. That had been her fatal mistake. Lily Santos had learned something that Victoria Harrington never understood. True power doesn't come from putting others down. It comes from lifting them up. And the surest path to respect isn't demanding it through wealth or status, but earning it through integrity and purpose. She'd been pushed down as far as anyone could fall. Lost everything except her son and her determination. And from that lowest point, she'd built something that would outlast any mansion, any country club membership, any superficial marker of success Victoria had ever valued. She'd built a legacy of second chances, of believing that every child deserved opportunity, of proving that how you treat people when they're powerless reveals everything about your character. Victoria thought she'd won when she got Lily fired. She'd celebrated removing an embarrassment from her perfect world. She never realized she'd just freed the one person capable of taking everything she valued and transforming it into something better. Looking back now, Lily could almost feel grateful for that conference room humiliation. Not because it didn't hurt, it had hurt terribly, but because it had reminded her who she really was beneath the grief and survival mode. It had rekindled a fire she thought was extinguished, and that fire had transformed an entire institution. "Come on," Lily told Daniel, closing his textbook. "Let's celebrate. Your choice tonight. Pizza?" "Pizza it is." As they headed out, Lily's phone buzzed. A text from James. "3 more schools just contacted us for consultation. Your model is spreading. Proud of you." She smiled and pocketed the phone. The work was just beginning. There were more Greenwoods out there. More Victorias creating toxic environments. More children who deserved better. But for tonight, she was just a mother taking her son for pizza. Tomorrow, she'd change the world a little bit more. The woman they dismissed as just a janitor had taught them the most valuable lesson of all. Never underestimate someone based on their current circumstances. Because the person mopping your floors today might be signing your termination papers tomorrow. And in the end, the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's proving they were wrong about you in ways they'll never forget. Lily Santos had done exactly that. She'd risen from the ashes of humiliation to become the very thing Victoria Harrington feared most. Living proof that character will always triumph over cruelty. And that true success is measured not by what you take from others, but by what you build for everyone. Have you ever been underestimated based on your circumstances? Ever had someone dismiss you because of your job or financial situation? Share your story in the comments. And if this journey from janitor to executive inspired you, subscribe to our channel for more stories about people who refuse to let cruelty define them. Because your current situation isn't your final destination, it's just the chapter before your comeback.